The phenomenon of migration is not, as we all know, something that was born in the last decades, since, from what history tells us, human beings have always moved to other lands, thus coming to populate the entire planet. Today, we are all familiar with this phenomenon, but first we need to make a distinction between immigration, meaning the entry and settlement in a country or region of people from other countries or regions, and emigration, meaning leaving one's land of origin to go to different places. This distinction is important because starting in the 20th century, Italy rapidly transformed from a country of emigration to a country of immigration as migration flows from Eastern Europe, Africa, Asia, and Latin America increased. After World War II, some balances of power crumbled, and many people were forced to leave their nations or the countries where they were hiding. At that time, Italy finds itself totally unprepared to this change, and at first, the issue of emigration remains mostly ignored. The most egregious case occurred in 1989 with the murderer of Jerry Essan Maslow, a 29-year-old South African man who was forced to flee his country because of persecution. Jerry, like many other immigrants, was working in a tomato field in Villa Literno, a small town near Caserta, and one night he was killed by a group of 3 boys motivated by racist ideas. Jerry's tragic death deeply shook public opinion, so much so that from that time on, many laws were enacted regarding the migrant issue, and many continue to be enacted as the phenomenon of emigration gains more and more relevance. By now, there is a tendency to use the terms migrant and refugee indiscriminately. However, there is a substantial difference, so much so that the Geneva Convention of 1951 and the protocol signed in New York in 1967 state the official definition of a refugee, declaring refugee those who are outside their country of origin due to persecution, conflict, violence, or other circumstances that threaten public order, and who, as a result, are in need of international protection from states and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. However, there is no single benchmark, and the characteristics for acquiring refugee status differ from country to country. There can be multiple driving factors for immigration, such as socio-political, demographic, economic, and even environmental factors, which lead to a series of consequences from which people are forced to flee. Our peninsula, with its strategic position on the Mediterranean Sea, has been the protagonist of several tragic events that have occurred in its waters, and the saddest episodes we can recall are the Lampedusa tragedy in 2013, in which more than 350 people died, followed by a second tragedy that occurred a few days later and was renamed the Shipwreck of the Children because of the high number of underage victims, and then the one that occurred last year in Cutro, where 94 people died, almost half of whom were children. With the increasing arrival of immigrant flows, the role of the community interpreter becomes essential, acting as a bridge between different cultures. This figure is different from the conference interpreter, since, first of all, they do not use booths, and moreover, they must be able to handle delicate situations, managing to convey the same emotional charge from one language to another. The community interpreter must obey to a code of ethics that can be divided into macro categories: confidentiality, accuracy, impartiality, transparency, professional boundaries, and neutrality are some of them. This figure works in various professional fields, such as medical, judicial, and immigrant shelters, and all of them require specialized education, which unfortunately is still lacking in Italy. Immigration has brought to light many important issues, including that of integration, and in this case we are talking about integration between immigrants and the host country, and this is not an easy issue to deal with because it needs constant insights and also a great spirit of acceptance and sharing. Integration is a multidimensional issue, meaning that it touches different aspects, including language. In Italy, in 1994, the certification in didactics of Italian as a foreign language, shortened in DITALS, was developed to enable the training of teachers suitable for teaching Italian as an L2 language, which is now recognized almost all over the world. In addition, thanks to continuous studies, different teaching programs have been designated depending on the target audience in the migration context: adults, children, and migrants with special educational needs. We must always look back, reflect on the events that have occurred in order to understand how to build a better future. Witnessing what is happening now in the world should be an incentive to reflect and act on the things that we can and want to improve, and the values we want to live by.